crisis just up the road from us in Mozambique that we need to know about right now. Big week for that. Let's get into it. I don't know about you guys, I was a little bit shocked to realize how little I knew about Mozambique. And I don't think I'm alone. Like, the vast majority of South Africans seem to know next to nothing about our neighbor, except if you're white and old, it's a communist country full of commies. And the apartheid government sent troops there to fight the commies. But we should know more about our neighbor countries. These are people separated from us only by the made-up borders, man-made, invented, that we use to define countries as somehow different from each other. And Mozambique is going through a historically bad time right now. So let's talk about Mozambique, a little bit about its history that shaped how it is today and what exactly is going on there. Mozambique was a Portuguese colony until independence in 1975, when it was taken over by the military resistance to colonialism named FRELIMO. FRELIMO established a one-party state on communist principles. In classic communist style, they got rid of traditional authorities and religious educational institutions and any other political organizations besides FRELIMO. Within 2 years, a civil war broke out in Mozambique between FRELIMO and an organization called RENAMO, which was armed and supported by apartheid South Africa. Basically, it was during the Cold War, and it was always the Soviets on one side, the Americans plus South Africa on the other. That's why apartheid South Africa was with RENAMO. This civil war was horrific. Both sides committed human rights atrocities, and estimated to 800,000 to 1 million people died. Another 1 million people fled the country, and 2 million more people were internally displaced, meaning they were forced to flee their homes to another part of Mozambique. The civil war lasted 15 years until 1992, and as part of the deal to end the fighting, all sides agreed to a multi-party democratic system with elections. The first election was in 1994. FRELIMO won. RENAMO accused FRELIMO of vote rigging. FRELIMO said, "Tell it to your mother." And FRELIMO has ruled Mozambique ever since. FRELIMO has ruled ever since that first election, and there have been many reports over the years of harassment of opposition figures, arbitrary arrests, and even assassinations, although the killings have never been directly linked by evidence back to FRELIMO. Cut to 2016, when a prominent opposition leader was killed in Maputo, Mozambique. At least 9 others had died across Mozambique in what appeared to be politically motivated killings in the year leading up to this significant murder. Felipe Nyusi was the president at the time. Nyusi is the latest FRELIMO leader accused of corruption and blessing elites whilst most Mozambicans suffer poverty. President Nyusi's friends were seriously getting blessed, guys. I know usually, like, you've got your ministers, you've got your people in your party who you give ministerial positions to, but according to one analyst, Nyusi made a high school friend of his Minister of Public Works, Housing, and Human Resources. A high school friend, guys. Do you remember the degenerates you were with in high school? Do you remember who sat next to you in maths? I do, and no disrespect to you, Alex, but I would never make you a government minister no matter how many times you offered me weed. Under the first few years of Nyusi's presidency, the number of Mozambicans living in poverty increased by 1 million, from 21 million people to 22 million. And a big reason why is the major scandal of modern Mozambique, which has tipped the country into crisis. In 2016, it came out that secret loans to the value of $2 billion had been made and taken out and secured by undisclosed government guarantees. Allegedly, the money was meant for state fishery projects, although it seems as though a lot of the money was embezzled and disappeared. The International Monetary Fund then, in response to this, withdrew financial aid from Mozambique, which triggered a debt default, and the currency collapsed. This costed the country over $11 billion. And by 2021, the economic devastation had pushed nearly 2 million Mozambicans into poverty. Reports suggest that some of the embezzled money from the secret loans was paid in kickbacks and bribes to powerful people. What we do know is that one company on trial paid $10 million to FRELIMO, and specifically $1 million to President Nyusi's election campaign. Well, that's what they say the money was for. We'll find out. So jump forward to the recent election in October 2024. FRELIMO won, allegedly. They say they won. Mozambique's highest court also said they won with a massive majority. Many international observers said the election wasn't free or fair. A presidential candidate from another party called Podemos, that's the name of the party, claims that he in fact won the election, but he says there was massive voter fraud and the presidency was stolen from him. And just quickly, this opposition candidate, this guy's name has reminded me that colonialism was so evil in so many ways, but it was also weird, guys. Colonialism, the Europeans were weird. Europeans imposed their languages on Africans, but Africans also kept their own language, like with Portuguese and the native languages in Mozambique. And that's how Podemos had a presidential candidate called Venancio Mondlane. His name makes it sound like he's about to sell you a prego roll in a Tsonga area. It just doesn't make sense. Venancio wasn't the only political leader to claim that the election was rigged, and in response, there have been enormous protests across Mozambique for months, involving hundreds of thousands of people. These protests have been met with violent repression by state security forces. Hundreds of people have died. Thousands have been imprisoned or disappeared. Police have used live gunfire on the protesters. And then on Christmas Day, at least 6,000 prisoners escaped from a high-security jail in Maputo. Authorities blame the protesters for the escape. The government has cut off internet for periods to stop information getting in or out. Never a good sign when the government turns off the internet. It's a horror show. And the state went after Venancio Mondlane. They accused him of trying to illegally seize power, and state prosecutors demanded $505 million in damages from one person, Venancio, who they believe, or they say, Mozambique has suffered from the protest. They believe that's how much money the damages of the protest has caused. Mondlane's bank accounts were frozen. Mondlane fled Mozambique months ago, but last Thursday he returned to the country, saying he was ready to talk with FRELIMO to end the crisis. He walked off of his aeroplane wearing a floral necklace, holding a Bible, and saying that he was the president elected by the people, and he swore to serve the country. I doubt FRELIMO's new president-elect, Daniel Chapo, was happy to hear Mondlane say that. And then, in the last few days, Mondlane was excluded from political negotiations. And over the weekend, Mondlane called on his supporters to take to the streets again. Protesters are going at it right now with security forces. Chapo's presidential inauguration is on Wednesday, and FRELIMO have announced that they're going to destroy all of the election ballots and related documentation on the 22nd of this month, which will put to an end any possibility of finding out what really happened in the election. Destroying all the ballots, not suspicious at all. It's giving bad husband. No, honey, I didn't cheat on you. I haven't been inappropriately messaging women. Also, I've deleted all my WhatsApp messages this morning. No reason, unrelated. Oh, and if all of this wasn't bad enough, Mozambique is also suffering a military insurgency in the north. The country has been under attack for about 7 years from Islamist insurgents. Nearly 4,000 people have died. Nearly 1 million people have been forced to flee. All of this is so shocking and a terrifying moment for Mozambique. And now you and I know what we need to know going into this pivotal week where it seems certain that it's going to get even wilder and more dangerous around the inauguration on Wednesday, if that inauguration even happens. We hope for peace and justice to return to our neighbors as soon as possible.